Welcome to the Rhythms for Life podcast. I'm Gabe.
I'm Rebekah.
And we've got the Bethkes with us today. And these guys, we're going to have fun today. I'm excited about marriage, community, and the really important pieces that help a marriage have strength. And we've been talking about it all season.
Yeah.
How do we overcome what divides to build a marriage that thrives? And we believe today's conversation, we hope, is going to help encourage a lot of couples to think more about community. And how does community play a role in your marriage? It can seem a little like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Obvious. Like common sense.
I don't think it is obvious. I think a lot of couples think.
Well, I think the idea of it is obvious, but we don't actually know how to do it.
Sometimes couples alone think, oh, if we're strong,
then we're good.
Then that's all that matters.
We need us.
And we don't need other people. I kind of grew up in a home where my family, we didn't have a lot of friends. My parents sort of thought we just as a family unit are going to be strong. And so we didn't have a lot of community around, which can be very isolating.
Yeah.
But I think we've learned in our marriage, community is critical.
Well, it became critical, I think, partly because we didn't see, we saw some friendships in our parents, but it was less of a priority. I think they were both working full time. We had friends at church. We'd do some potlucks together at our Baptist church, and maybe have a holiday here and there, share Thanksgiving. That was kind of our version of that growing up. But I think I found community outside of that in school, and you did too. Because as kids, you have to find friends your age that you feel connected with. So it became a bigger value for us, I think, even into marriage. Because some people, I just think they're extroverts and social, and they feed off that, or they just kind of hold off. What did you guys do when you first started dating? Did you both have lots of friends, and then you invited those friends into that relationship with each other, or
Good
did you?
question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, our journey is interesting where everyone's is a little different. We got married in the place that we both were raised and lived in. So we did have a lot of relationships kind of that we're bringing from both sides.
Yeah.
But also a lot of mutual friends. Our interesting part is we felt like we were the first people to get married in our circle. So then we kind of had a lot of single friends, which of course, I love that. I think singles and married need to interact more and rather than silo off themselves from each other. But there was a challenge about that where we didn't have married community. And that actually was one of the main reasons that moved us a few times. It moved us to Hawaii, and then even in a different way has moved us here to Franklin, Tennessee. But yeah, that was actually one of the impetuses of us moving is I just heard a mentor say basically people move for work all day. They work for, if it's a good enough salary 3 states away and it sounds good and whatever, they'll take it. And he named another reason. He's like, no one ever moves for community, but they should.
Right.
And that doesn't mean move states away, but even if it's down the road, that should be a highly pivotal value that you are trying to architect and design your entire life around, I think, for what it actually gives you over the long haul.
Yeah, the average person's moved 6 times by the age of 45.
Wow.
The first reason is for a new home, bigger new home.
Yep.
And the second one's for a career change.
Exactly.
For a new job.
But it's never for people or relationship.
Yeah. So you can imagine how we've done that. We lived in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We then moved to New York. Yeah. And it was all our choice. It wasn't necessarily career opportunities. And then moved here. We got to kind of choose where we were going to live. But a lot of people don't have that option. They get a good job offer and it's like, oh, well, we're off.
Yeah. Right. And sometimes it does the opposite. Then they just moved into massive isolation. The new place, no friends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it actually is sometimes the antithesis of moving for a community. It's moving for the opposite of community, and it's really detrimental.
And sometimes it's because you're making those decisions in isolation, right? Because if you're not leaving a flourishing community, it doesn't feel that painful. You're like, oh, I didn't really have community anyway, so I've kind of normalized a life without community. So what did it look like for you guys to start meeting married couples early on? What did that look like?
It was when we moved to Hawaii, we had a lot of young families. And so it really was, and it's so vulnerable to move to a new place, because I had lived there before and we knew people, but now we were married. So it was a totally different season. Yeah. So I feel like you have to really put yourself out there. So we would just ask people to come for dinner, twice a week, once a week. We would just, come. And then it's almost like you're dating around, and it's hard sometimes. You're like, do you connect with the husband? Do I connect with the wife?
The double where you have to relationally connect with both that's a tough math. That's tough math.
Yeah, but it was just kind of saying yes to constantly trying and being okay with being the ones to always invite.
Yeah, you guys initiate a lot, and I'm sure that once they've had a meal that you guys have cooked, Jeff, it is. I will never say no.
I wasn't that good 10 years ago though. It takes learning.
Jeff started to cook when we had our third baby because I was out, but I remember one time we had friends over and I cooked and I did one of Sean and Nyquist, the lasagna recipe, and it like you don't have to cook the noodles, you just put it in.
We'll cook lasagna recipe.
And so we like sit down to eat, and all of a sudden people start crunching, and the noodles did not cook. They were just like
Well, I think
dry.
you realize you bought the wrong ones for what the recipe said.
Bought the right ones, but it wasn't saucy enough.
No, it was.
It didn't like cook.
No, I remember very distinctly. It's the recipe called for a certain type of noodles that are already like pre-made.
You do. It's
It's
true.
pre-made or pre-baked, and she just bought the raw ones or whatever you call it. And so we're literally eating on lasagna crackers, and the friends didn't say a word.
No.
And I'm halfway through, and I'm like, can we just call this out right now? Can we just say that? I don't think.
Best friend from childhood, so she's like, Alyssa, it's okay, and she just kept serving her husband like, John, you'll eat it, just keep
And it sounds like she's eating rocks. Sounds like you're eating rocks. You know what I mean?
Someone's gonna lose a tooth.
Yeah, but even making the joke about that, you realize like that was such a fun memory. We had people over, made relationship, and it's like, yeah, dinner table, inviting people to your table is like the lowest hanging fruit, I think, of living in community.
Yeah.
Just eat together, eat meals together.
just
bring
meet at a
people over.
park and get takeout. Like it's just
Right.
we all have to eat, so
Yeah.
just like invite people to come eat with you.
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
that's partly why some people are intimidated by community, at least from what I've experienced talking to people, is that so much of it is hospitality.
Yeah.
You know,
It has to be perfect.
and so then there's this like pressure, like, oh, it has to be clean. I have to make something from scratch. I don't know what to do. And I had to throw that away like years ago when we first moved back here because we were starting over again with new friends at 40. And so I'm curious what this was like for you, but every season in a new region, with everyone starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And you're older and your kids are in different stages. So even what your intention needs to look like at home versus outside of the home with friends, like balancing that obviously is a little bit of a juggling act. But finally we were like, okay, everything's just going to be potluck. We'll do the main dish and then everyone can figure out the sides.
Yeah.
Because then at least it gave an opportunity to show up,
Yeah,
just
right.
to create a space for that. But what would you say for people who are like, I don't have a space to host. I am not Jefferson behind the grill.
Solid meats, yeah.
Yeah. But I feel alone. Maybe they're in their marriages right now and they feel alone. Like what are some of the things you guys tried? You said you initiated a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be willing to be rejected on initiation and play more of a, for lack of a better term, an evangelistic game of just like, hey, I'm going to go for 10 and maybe land 2. And because I think most people, they want to bat perfect in that regard because they're so sensitive to the rejection. So it's kind of like, oh, I work up a ton of energy to ask a couple to come over for dinner or let's go meet at a park or let's go whatever, have they play date with the kids. And if they say no, I'm devastated for 3 weeks and I don't invite anyone else again. There are a lot of people that really wrestle with that, I think.
Takes a lot of courage.
Well, yeah.
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 Just
But I
put
think-
yourself out there.
Yeah, but you just have to flip some type of switch or else you're just going to be in that perpetual cycle, I think, of, man, it's of course, like people have their lives, their boundaries, their things. And I think too, I think it's trusting God a lot more. I think we've realized, it sounds weird to say, but yeah, like you kind of, there's certain people you see that are like maybe tangentially related in your circle and you kind of are like, oh, I want to get to know them because I'm also using like dating language, like relationally attractive for your relationship. You're like, oh, they look like we have same age kids. We look like we do the same things, blah, blah, blah. And you keep knocking on that door and the door keeps closing. But then all of a sudden this one family over here that you like have never thought of is just like showing, you're all of a sudden like, oh, we've been in the same room 4 times this last month. And so I think pay attention because I think we've tried to force some relationships before rather than just like be open to who God wants to kind of web you with in relationship, in proximity. And so I think that's really important is like kind of just open your eyes a little bit more to your natural rhythms of life and then ask God like, oh, who should I pursue? Who should I initiate with? Who should I talk to? And sometimes it is not the couples and the families getting along. Like sometimes it is like, oh, I just really connect with that husband. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to smoke a cigar with him or hang out with him or whatever. But like, we're not really going to hang out as families because I just know that would not be a vibe,
Right.
And so like, you kind of have to like ebb and flow in that way. But that's what I would say. Would you say anything on that?
Yeah, I think even I think I'm thinking of couples too where maybe both of them are more introverted. So it's harder to invite people in. And so I just think maybe even looking at your schedule of like what's natural, like what's something naturally that in your rhythm that you do once a week that would be easy to invite them in. Like maybe you always watch football on Sunday. So hey, come over, we'll get wings from like Edley's and just hang out a little bit. So it's not so intimidating. Or like for me, I love going for walks. So it's like I can invite a woman to come walk with me. And then if we connect, maybe I can invite their family over and,
It's like layers and rhythms that you're embedding into already natural rhythms. Yeah.
But I do think takes courage and being okay if it doesn't work out or
Yeah.
rejection or having to pivot.
Yeah.
But I just think God's heart is one of community, like the Trinity, perfect unity. And so he longs for us to be in community. And so the more faithful we are to pursue it, he will bring that couple or community in.
So you guys just made a move.
Big move.
From Hawaii to Franklin.
5-ish thousand miles away or whatever.
Literally just live like a few
right.
100 yards from
That's right.
my home.
That's right.
So
We're
we
very
are
happy about
Yeah.
we are getting to experience more community because of proximity.
Yes.
Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
There's different layers of community, but the
Yeah.
proximate community
Huge.
is amazing where your lives are just overlapping. You're
Yeah.
seeing people. We had Bible study this morning. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of men that every Tuesday morning show up. And so we
Yeah.
get to overlap lives, and the deeper that gets, the richer it gets. But talk about that, because a lot of people move to new cities. We were just talking about that. It is those first few months. I mean, how long have you been? Like
8 months, 9 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
Those first months are crucial.
Yeah.
Kind of establishing and,
Yes.
and trying to find those friends, like you said, dating, like
Yeah.
figuring all that out. But how's it been for you guys just kind of landing in a new community
Yeah.
and trying to find those friends?
Yeah, I mean, it is vulnerable. It's difficult. It's fun, but I think kind of even piggybacking off my last answer of like leaning into just what God is already putting in your lap. And I think I'm blanking on. I think it might have been the Harvard life, the longevity life study they did that's really famous, or it might have been something else. But there's a sociologist found the three really important. Your word proximity brought it up for me. The three kind of things that glue community together and that make relationships really, really strong webs is proximity is number one, number two is unplanned interactions, and number three is vulnerability. And those, like, they've studied it. Like, this is like actually like proven in social science that strong relationships have all three of those. Weak relationships only tend to have one. And meaning like really good relationships, you can look at relationships that you're really close with, and they usually have some version of those three things. And so proximity is huge. You can't really be that close with people communally and covenantally and like where they know the good, the bad, the highs, the lows, your whole entire life, unless you're close with them like in a literal locational way.
Yeah.
Okay. Then number two is unplanned interactions, which was really funny. The research found that basically if everything is scheduled, if everything is forced, it does something to the spirit that's just not super natural. Like we are meant to, I almost said rub up against each other, but that sounds weird. We are meant to, and I already said it, so there you go. But what is the word? Like we are meant to cross.
Cross paths. Cross paths.
There we go. Better metaphor.
Chest bump.
Yes, chest bump. We are meant to kind of cross by each other and kind of like pass by each other in unplanned natural ways. And I do think small towns allude to that a little bit more, but like, when you're at the grocery store, when you're, I would say our version of that, which is really helpful, is with you is like, it's like, hey, I got a yard work thing real quick, or I'm doing something and I see you on a walk or whatever. That's
I
unplanned
know. I was
interaction.
just saying that. I was like, every time we go for a walk, if he's on the porch,
Yeah,
you
then we
better believe
stop
like we're
and-
going to stop, and then you'll eventually come out, and I'll be
Exactly.
hanging. Then
And
at
the
some
kids
point, the
come
kids
out,
are like,
dog comes out. It's the whole thing.
We're walking and you hear Jeff's voice from like 500 yards
That's a
away.
real thing. That's a real thing. You're like, yeah, that's Jeff's voice. And then the last one's vulnerability. And so then once you have kind of those building blocks, then you actually have to live real life together where you actually know each other at a really deep level. I mean, I think we all could say we have people in our lives, and hopefully we don't do this as well, where you can just be like, oh man, I've known you for 10 years and oh my goodness, I had no idea your life was on fire. Like that's not a good place to be, right? And so like having places where you can actually like share that, be honest with that. And then I think of even, our hang a little bit ago where I was just sharing, I'm hanging out, we're on your porch and we're just sharing life. And I'm like, that's when you put all three of those together, it's really, really important. And so I would just say, try to see that as a matrix that you start thinking about your relationships through.
You have to structure it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I name 5 to 7 gendered friends? Like if I'm a guy, guys, and can I name 5 to 7 maybe families that I feel like could fit in this matrix, or that already do, but I just need to like have a matrix for it.
Yeah, that's good. I have a couple responses to the first one. For us being here 12 years now, something like that, 11 to 12 years. I came in with some idea of who our community would be as well.
Exactly.
Some of these were long distance, just like national friends through peers with work. Even just some we met right up front, early on. We're like, we're going to all be close. And it never works out like that.
Exactly.
And I was just I think because of that, and because my work caused me to be gone a lot. Like it's hard to really establish something naturally. You have to make so much of that happen. And then after about 5 years, 5 to 7 years, really almost into COVID, it was almost like we just decided like we were just so open to it. And we had already started, but I think even in the last probably half of the time we've lived here, just open for just the interruption of
Yeah.
God. And just that,
Yeah.
like that prayer of like when you walk out your door, like, show me who to encounter.
Yeah.
And like put them in my path and help me notice somebody that I might not notice normally, and like give me the words to say. And I remember praying that halfway through New York, and that started to feel like home after that prayer, and then praying that again here. And now it's all friends we never would have imagined, and yet it's so rich because God often surprises us with what he has for us that's so much better. And I think the piece that you also mentioned on the vulnerability is what I'd love to like dig into, because that is why we put this in the marriage book, is that are there honest conversations you're having with couples outside of just your spouse or just a paid counselor that's telling the truth about the state of your intimacy, the state of your marriage, any resentments or unforgiveness or just, distance that's growing. And then all of a sudden, if you're already siloed off and then you're siloed off from one another, you're both left isolated and alone.
Man.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to get too much into our own testimony time, but there is an example I just thought of with that you need friends that can call you out on the hard stuff, but also just even be like processors with you, right? And I can think back to a few landmark moments in the last 5 to 7 years of our marriage where like, friends really, a certain conversation where they were processors with us, where there's a little bit of tears, there's a little bit of vulnerability, it's really tough between us. I don't think in that moment where there was huge epiphanies, but I look back and be like, that was a pretty serious, like pivotal moment of like what it unlocked or the peace it gave us or the kind of the neutralizing of how hard it was between us two. And, I could think of one specifically last year, some of our best friends. That was the first time we were going through something really tough in a disagreement way. It's probably, I feel like we agree on everything. Not marriages are like, not a lot of marriages like that, but I'm like, we agree on I won't say we agree on everything. We sooner or later, someone wins and the other person is like, yeah, I think that sounds good. Like, you're right. Like that type of thing. And we usually get there. And this one was like, dude, standoff for days. This one, years.
Harder and harder.
It was getting, it was the only time we've had this in our marriage where it was just like, whoa, like the Lord's telling me something. Oh, the Lord's telling me something. And these are polar opposite. And no one's budging. So it was like, and we've never had that before. So it was really difficult. And, there was, of course, counseling in there, et cetera. But it really was, I would say, a conversation with friends. We're just there. We're in our porch, our little like screened in sunroom in Hawaii. And I just remember a couple hours of like, man, we're wrestling, we're crying together, and they're just listening. And I don't remember any huge epiphany, but I just remember that something like unlocked in that moment. And I think, and I think it was just the like, it like was the first release valve I felt like we felt in that whole process. And then I just got way softer, and then I just kind of like gave up a little bit in a surrender way, not a bad way. And I just look back, and you're like, man, that's very pivotal. Yeah. And I don't know where we would have been without that moment. And I could probably name 2 to 3 of those over the last handful of years. That is friends accepting our vulnerability or us being on the receiving side of theirs. That's like, that's actually a pretty big crossroads moment when you look back on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm like crying just thinking about it, because I think I think it can be easy to think when you get married, like all we need is us and the Lord, like we'll be good. And you realize that you have to have community and people that are for your marriage, because there'll be times where there's resentment you don't realize, or bitterness, or you just butt heads, and you have to have people that you can be totally honest with that will be for you guys no matter what. And I think when you have opportunity to talk to another couple about it, you're softer because you're just more kind with how you talk about things in front of them,
It's true.
And but it's still, you have to have that vulnerable spot, and you need people in your marriage that you can be really honest and raw with, because marriage is really hard, and you can't do it alone. Like or you won't have a thriving marriage if you're alone.
I think for Rebekah and I can think of 3 specific occasions. Dan and Ann in South Bend, we took a road trip. We were struggling with something in our marriage, and just sitting with them to process. I think of Jason and Tori, David and Lori sitting with us and processing through a moment
Family,
that we were
friends,
just stuck. I mean,
25
I think as couples we get stuck.
Yes.
And your point's exactly right.
Yeah.
You sit with another couple.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get perspective.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
They're like, wait, you two are great people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I love you. You're
Yes.
awesome. And you're awesome together. They will remind you of the original vision
Yes.
of your marriage and how beautiful it is. And in some ways it illuminates the ways in which
you see
a
each
lot of
other
other things have gotten in the way. Perhaps it's the enemy. You made agreement with some things that your spouse is the problem. It's not you.
Yeah.
Or you're just hearing your side and you can't even hear the other person.
Exactly.
clear.
You're so entrenched in your perspective.
You're like,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
What's that third party helps diffuse and
Yeah.
helps you make some sense of it. And I've had that happen for me too. My heart softens.
Yes.
Something happens to where I'm like, wow, I need to repent of something.
Yes.
And that's all because there was community established. That's not something you can just develop overnight.
No.
Yeah.
And so I think for couples listening, the encouragement is build those relationships now, peer to peer. We've had Sarah and Emerson as people we could look up on, and they'd be willing to jump on a Zoom with us when, during COVID, like get on a Zoom with a friend and just do not do this alone, because we've had friends who've gone through these moments alone.
Yeah.
And you quickly can move to separate paths, isolation.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just the assumption or the kind of the finale, like that a belief or agreement is first like it is what it is. And like we're just not going to get each other and we're different people. And all of a sudden you're different people living different lives under the same roof. And then you're roommates. And then all of a sudden that drift is so big that you're like, we don't work. It doesn't work anymore. I don't think I can do this. That kind of slowly takes that progression. And I would imagine there's people watching this that are like, I don't know who I would turn to. And because that does feel very risky, especially if you have any kind of ministry position.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
like, where do I begin?
Where's a safe place?
Yes. Who is safe? And I would love to speak to that for a minute, but my insight on that is like, it's kind of this idea of be the friend you wish to have. So we've talked about that in other podcasts, but how have Gabe and I been a neutral third party for other people and created a safe space and then hold their story with confidence? I think it's a big deal. Like to be a trustworthy friend, you have to be
trustworthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To have a trustworthy friend, you have to be one yourself, and you will likely need to lead with that. And just take the risk, because that shared burden lifts, right? So we are supposed to bear one another's burdens in love, so that all of a sudden it's lifting the burden because somebody else is now feeling it with us, practicing empathy with us, helping us see a perspective beyond our own.
Yeah.
You feel like a lot of couples just don't realize that fighting is just part of a marriage. I mean, obviously you learn it as time goes on, but sometimes feel like, we must have a problem. There's something wrong with our marriage because we had a disagreement.
Yeah.
And when couples start to realize, no, it's actually normal to have disagreement.
Totally.
It starts to give some freedom to it.
Yeah, well, I think it takes the air out of the balloon in that one too. I think I think there's a lot of people that are conflict averse and and avoidant and stuff like that. But all of us have a part of that in our heart. That mean we don't like something it does to us or what it triggers in us or what it brings up. And that's why I love that part in your guys' book of, I don't know, section 3 or whatever, about like you got to go back to go forward. Yeah. Like, just like so much work in marriage. And I don't think this is true 100% of the time, but I think I'm starting to be on the team that actually couples counseling is amazing, necessary, it's changed our life, etc. But I would actually make the argument, subjectively from our experience, that our individual journeys of transformation and counseling or mentorship have radically had a bigger effect once we come back together than the couples counseling. And what I mean by that is like, you kind of learn that, hey, the problems with us are the problems with me individually and you individually and how those collide. And so kind of clearing that out individually has brought so much ROI, for lack of a better term, on our marriage, even and helped our conflicts. Because then it's like what happens is now when we have all these moments and triggers or whatever, you just start to be like a little bit more sensitive to, that's me doing X because of Y. That's me, feeling this way. And then you realize that's an actual invitation to intimacy, first of all, but also in transformation with the Lord. So like, that's what I would tell couples is conflict sucks. It's not super fun. I actually do love it. I'm one of the 1% that's like, let's go. This is amazing. And almost came out in Bible study this morning.
I want to hear about that.
The two of you together. I want to watch this.
So I love it. I love it. But there's also some layers there of the Lord's like softening me. But but I think, what was I doing where I was going with that?
Well, let me ask you on counseling. One of the caveats I would say to that, that we talk about in the book, is if you don't have an individual counselor though that's committed to the marriage,
100% there.
Yeah.
No, this is don't be on separate islands with two separate voices.
Creating a lot of
self-actualization.
creating a lot of challenges. People are going to counselors that really aren't married
100%
or couples counselors. They're designed to do individual therapy.
Yes.
And if they don't have that commitment to when you go to that counselor to say, hey, our commitment's to marriage. So
Yes.
anything I want to process with you has to go towards this. Then it really can lead them down a different path.
Dark
path. And we're going to have to be careful.
Yes. Well, I will absolutely disclaim that because I think that's enormously important. So our exact picture that I think has gone really well for us is we have an amazing counselor that for our marriage, for both of us, but that we will also see individually. And so he's kind of working it in a triad, right? He's like, I'll see both of you guys right now, but I'll see just Jeff now. And he's kind of he's working it all out, pulling all the strings, pulling all the parts, and then he's like,
not you two going
no, aren't separate people or anything like that. No, that is. I think that leads to bad places. I think I agree. You start getting in just separate worlds. You're like,
and it's
you know
he
what I mean?
said versus she said to whatever counselor there's talking to, and there's really no repair happening because everyone's kind of
Yeah, it was most of the time it's about how your spouse has got so many issues you're dealing with.
No, exactly.
Right. And they'll never know that person.
Yes, and I think the other underlying premise I was operating under when I said that too is also like, is the assumption of basically everything that's wrong with our marriage is me. And I want to, and that's a little overcranked, but it helps being like, I need to get this right so that I stop bleeding it out on my spouse.
Yeah.
Right? I like my wounds, all these trauma, life, family of origin. Like you got to deal with that or else it just spills out on your spouse in conflict. And then you realize 99% of conflict is just those cycles of just like, oh, that's something that happened when you were 13 that you've never processed and never dealt with. And, and I'm not
coming back.
Exactly. And I'm not the person either that says like everything's from childhood, but there is we are rhythmic, habitual creatures with our physiology. And so until you've kind of like allowed the Lord to transform that in you, then you just kind of dump it out. I think it's that Rollheiser that says, if you don't transform your pain, you'll just transmit your pain. And so it's like, I think that's just marriage conflict 101 or 401.
Well, and we've described that as a dysfunctional dance that you get into with your mate. And anybody who wants to know what dance they're doing with their spouse, we have a quiz you can take. You can see that in the lower third.
Oh,
go there.
What dance are we doing? I want to take
and check out the dance you're doing because this tends to be the pattern we just get into.
Yeah.
And it can change at different phases of marriage. But a lot of it is based on our origin story.
And what is unresolved.
Unresolved, conflict, everything they haven't forgiven.
Totally.
And it's helped Rebekah and I a lot to just recognize, okay, this is the pattern.
Round and round we go. Here we go.
And usually what will happen is you'll then like be halfway through a conflict and you just kind of like, you just get this matrix moment of like, oh, this is playing out.
Yes.
And it kind of just stops you a little bit, calms you a little bit. Yeah.
Well, and you realize you've both gone offline. Like you're really just retaliating, but no one's hearing.
That's Rebekah's new word.
What?
She uses that.
Going offline or retaliate?
No, offline.
Hey, Dave, you've gone offline.
Oh, yeah. She's like, you're dysregulated. What is it? Dysregulated?
It sounds like a plug's been panting in there.
Stop at this therapy talk.
I can always tell.
Don't tell me I'm dysregulated.
He looks away. He looks away and then doubles down. I'm like, doubles down.
That's amazing.
No, he literally breaks eye contact, looks to the left, which is a sign of shame.
Yeah.
And then he doubles down.
See? Now she's shaming me.
For your sign of shame.
No, I'm not saying I'm not shaming
He's
you.
convinced if I don't look at her, I'm feeling
No,
shame.
he always looks away right before he's going to throw a punch. Throw a punch.
There's a line in Sochi.
Like, I get really soft and I look away.
Yeah, you look up when you talk about it.
No, but it's easier. Here's the bottom line. It's easier to throw a punch to the one person in your life you love the most when you're not looking at them.
That's fair.
And this is again from the Soul of Shame. So take it up.
Punch, right?
No, but take it up with Kurt Thompson. He wrote about it in the Soul of Shame.
No, it's good. That's good.
Because we retreat either inwardly or physically. Like I will do the opposite. I'll be like, I think I'm done, and I will leave the room. Whereas he'll stay in the room, but he will like break eye contact because it still allows you to fight.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to attack like the person you love.
Yeah.
I want you to start looking at it exactly. Stop calling him out. So you feel ashamed.
Yeah. Don't look left on me.
And initially, he was like, "Oh, you're reading the Shame Soul book."
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know how I feel about it. And then he wound up reading it, and then all of a sudden we're like, "Wow, we do have physiological responses to shame. It's just natural because we don't feel good about what's happening, but we don't know how to stop it. And again, we're already in motion. You know, sometimes."
Did you guys have any mentors early in your marriage? People you could talk to that just were a few years or many years ahead?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's probably the thing that I would say is the most saving grace of our marriage is we've always had a really safe space with a few couples. Certain couples in different seasons, but always there's been a few of like, man, it's going haywire. We need some help. We need some advice. And again, not to the point at the very beginning of where we said, move for community. We never moved for like mentors, but I was on the team of like, man, we need to come live with you for a week because this is really hard. And we've done that before. Like, I think I just am like, whatever it takes to get it resolved and not in like a surfacey way, but I just have always had that personality of like, we need to figure this out. And so it's like pause work, pause whatever. And that takes obviously a lot of sacrifice. Not everyone can do that, but yeah, I would say a lot of, and then the usual follow-up question people have with that is, well, then how do you find those mentors if we don't have them? What I usually encourage people with is especially if you're like in the mid 20s, like, or at least still in your 20s where you have a lot of nimbleness and flexibility. And I would say instead of asking them to be your mentor, I always tell people, like, how can you give them ninja hidden value? Like, basically where you're just accidentally with them more than they would realize, and you're just helping them out with things, and all of a sudden you're at their dinner table, all of a sudden you're there for a coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
And that tends to then get towards like, okay, and then 6 months in, hey, can we come over once a week and ask you questions, whatever. But that tends to go a lot better. Just going to like, will you be my mentor, to a couple usually feels like, will you marry me on the first date?
Yeah.
So I tend to tell people to not do that.
And the flip. Go ahead, Alyssa. You were gonna say something?
I was just going to say, because I keep thinking what you said about vulnerability, proximity, and what was the other one? I don't remember. Anyway,
unplanned interaction.
We've never actually
Unplanned
had
interaction.
mentors that lived near us.
Never.
And so, but when we come up with those things, it's like, hey, can we come stay with you for a week?
Yeah.
Or can I come to you for like a weekend and you can work this out with me? Or Zoom calls or calling. And so, which I just want to encourage with people, because sometimes you can look around and be like, I don't even know who I would go to. But it's like, do you know anybody
Anyone.
that you could call or Vox or,
Send a voice note too.
voice note to, or even just like sometimes a text feels way easier. Like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Is there any way we could hop on a call? And I did that with a mentor, and she's like, why don't you just come stay with me for a weekend? So just to encourage people, because I think you can feel like, I don't even know having one that lives by me.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think older couples are actually in churches are dying to be tapped in as that resource. They feel like our society pushes old people to the fringe. We don't need you anymore. You're discarded. You're useless. It's not like you've gotten older and all these things. When it's actually like biblically the highest peak point of wisdom, value, blessing. To have gray hairs is a fruit of wisdom and blessing. So I think they're dying to be tapped in. So I think like pursue them.
I was just gonna say that if you're, no matter where you live, there's probably a smallish church nearby, and there's going to be those faithful people. It doesn't have to be small, but sometimes it's easier to make friends faster that way, or at least not massive. But wherever you go on a Sunday, if you just find a couple that you just resonate with, you appreciate, you see their, like marriage, there's joyfulness still. They have kids they love and grandkids they love, and you just like being around them.
Yeah.
Just initiate taking them out to coffee.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, can I just ask you a few questions? It doesn't even have to be like, you're now my mentor.
Totally. Just get I know them.
Yeah, but just initiating that. I still to this day, and I'm not that old, light up if a girl would want to do that, or just,
totally.
it's not like a massive commitment. It's
honoring.
just connecting. And I just would love to pick your brain for a few things, or I need prayer in a couple of these categories. And how would you suggest? I mean, that is in us. If the Lord has given us people, then he puts it in us to pour that right back out. So don't be shy with that.
And then I would say for couples who feel like your marriage is thriving, you're doing well, take advantage of helping other people who are struggling. Understand this need exists. Anytime I hear from someone, usually be a husband that would say, look, I'm going through something. I'm struggling. For me, it's like a 10 alarm fire.
Yeah.
Like I go to work right away that day. Okay, let's talk. What's going on?
Yeah.
This is crucial. And I think we have to view our marriages as that essential.
Yeah.
When these things are popping up and somebody reaches out, this means they've gotten to a level of this fight or wherever it's at that needs additional attention.
Yeah, usually means it's
Sometimes.
at a 10, not a 1.
So invite them over. Hey, how soon could you guys come over? We'd love to process. We've done that many times with couples, quickly, hey, come over. Or I'll drive to the guy's house and talk to him about what's going on. So I just want to raise that level for everybody listening that's encouraged in their marriage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Pass it on.
that need mentoring, help, and your couch to come sit.
Yeah. And maybe you're listening to this and you're not either of those extremes. You're kind of midway. You're like a 5 out of 10, on any given day. And there's no house on fire, but you're not really loving, all your connected time
stale.
together.
Yeah.
It just feels like just going through the motions. You're going to stay together. You can lose yourself in what the kids have going on, but there is a little bit of a disconnect. And so I just want to speak to those people right now. That there's a drift. And the thing is a drift without some force like opposition, the drift will continue to widen. The natural way a drift works is it will continue without any input, just get bigger. And so I would just proactively encourage you that if you're feeling that, it's fine. I would rather just be with my girlfriends. He'd rather go do stuff with the guys. We're happy. It works. The problem is it just doesn't end there. You can live there for a while, but it just gets bigger. And so I would still come back together and go hey, let's talk about, what is missing. Like an inventory we do a lot is what's right, what's wrong, what's confused, and what's missing. Just asking those questions maybe once a year or twice a year. But hearing from one another without reaction, I think is a big deal. Just creating space for that to go like, how could we turn toward one another and talk to friends? It doesn't have to mean you go to counseling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are like resistant to counseling because they don't think they need it. And we're not suggesting that we do, but you do need friends you can be honest with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You need to
For
grow.
sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Someone needs to help you grow.
Yeah.
I think it's so important as a friend to ask your friends, how's your marriage? Like,
Yeah.
just tell me, how's it going? And I think to
Yeah.
do it constantly and regularly, to just have that space to be like, actually, it's really hard right now. Or right now, I just feel like, gosh, we're not really connecting.
Yeah.
Just have that person like pray with you, encourage you
Yes.
before. I think
So
just
good.
even to have marriage on your mind, because I think for the people who have like little kids and life is crazy, or they're big kids, sometimes you just don't even think about it. So it's like
Yeah.
if someone's just checking in and be like, oh yeah, my marriage is important. How is it going? That's a huge shift
Yeah.
too.
And we're in a group weekly as well. And I find that does come up a lot. Like we're
Mhm.
just going through the scriptures together.
Yeah.
It's not a marriage class or a marriage like group. It's just a Bible study group. But inevitably each week, if like there's any pain points in that room, often it is related to our closest relationships, whether it's with our children or our parents or our spouses or whatever. And it is great to be able to voice that in safety and go like, yes, let's all double down and pray with you on this. You know, having that as a regular part of your rhythm.
Well, Jeff and Alyssa, we love being in community now with you guys.
That's right.
You're strengthening us in our relationship,
Same.
marriage, friendship, and we just love you guys and all the amazing things both of you are putting in the world. Thanks for being willing to come just talk about marriage, how you guys are doing it, what you've learned, so that everybody can benefit from it. We love you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Having us.